Had like as my personal opinion to do something like that. Obviously, it's all about priorities in the end. But you're working really hard, didn't get to it. So last year, I really want to make a point to do something, to add value to our environment or to our society. And it took me a while before I found a company that actually can do this in a way that also matches with our company, meaning like technology based. A smart solution, smart guys actually behind it, and that came up to Regreener, and you will present more about Regreener in a bit. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I just mentioned already, and I think we need to at least mention that's a horrible situation at the moment in Ukraine and Russia. It of course hits the people in Ukraine a lot, and of course in the end also Russia. But what actually does this mean? It does happen. It's a big impact for the whole world. And I read this through a guy that I find is very intelligent. I read his book. Some also has read it as well. It's *Sapiens* from Yuval Noah Harari. Yeah, he has a very smart view about society and how we work. And he also gave a TED talk about the impact of what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, and how it will impact, for example, also Australia, even though they're miles away from the conflict. What happens is that, already seen it, that now people will invest in military. The expenditure of military will go up. Germany, rightfully so. I'm not saying it's wrong. I had my opinion about that, but in this case, I completely understand it. But the expenditure will go up. In the old days, let's say thousands of years ago, but not even that long ago, it was normal to have like 30, 40, 50% of your expenditure to go into military development. That meant that the money can't go to healthcare, can't go to avoid climate change. So that's a really bad, actually, result of this war. Of course, the war itself is already horrible. The results of that is terrifying. But even for the long term, it means that initiatives like what we're doing right here will have an impact, because the 1 billion that Germany just said we're going to spend it on NATO, we can't spend on healthcare or on climate change. So that makes actually this kind of projects even more important to do so. So we started with something. Again, he'll explain, but it's just the beginning. I do think that we have a responsibility, all of us, at least we as a company will take it and have taken it, and we will take it even more to do something on that when it comes to our society. I know it sounds, and I don't want to sound like it's, how do you say it, hypocrite. It's not like that. We really want to do something. We can do much more, and it's just not doing it for commercial reasons. That's also what held me back. In my private way, I do stuff that I find important, but when it comes to a company, it always might sound like, yeah, you do it for your commercial reasons. Yes, of course, it does help as well, because, for example, with Danit yesterday, we were talking about employer branding. What we do, people like it to be part of the company. But we do this first and foremost because we want to help and we want to make a difference. That's just my talk about that, about sustainability, what we want to do. I suggest you take it over and yes. Give the presentation. You want to be connected, I guess?
I'd love to.
I guess it's just this one, right? Yeah, tech company, yeah? There you go. I'll just take it over here. Good luck.
Thank you. There's Outlook telling me that I have to be here. That's always a good thing. Yes, here we are. All right, guys, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, for giving me the opportunity to explain a bit about what we do, how our company works, and about our partnership, of course, with ViaEurope, which, of course, is a company that is, as per this moment, taking its responsibility. But like BJ just said, it's only the beginning, and we're just getting started. Before I dive into what Regreener does, a little bit about myself. My name is Job van Hooijdonk. I'm a lawyer, actually. Well, I used to be a lawyer. I worked for a big law firm in Amsterdam and in London for almost 4 years. And being a millennial, after a few years, I thought, what in the world am I doing here? Drafting board resolutions until midnight, and then when you think you're about to go home, someone drops something on your desk and says, good luck. So I did see a lot of sunrises there, and I thought, first of all, this is not what I'm going to do until I'm 60. And second of all, there's more to life than this. And like I said, being a millennial, I started thinking about, let's think about what is really important to me as a person, but also what is important to those surrounding me. And let's try and see if I can create something that actually can make an impact and make a difference in this world. When I was thinking about that, I reached out to Bernard, my companion, my co-founder, and together we had this dinner, which is now a moment that we refer to a lot. We had Bami together, and we always say the board Bami moment, when we realized that we could actually do something. Well, this is something that I probably don't have to tell you, but let me quickly explain to you why this is important to us. Carbon emissions are rising, we all know, I don't have to explain that to you. Yesterday evening there was a big article in the Dutch newspapers about 2021 actually being the year with the highest carbon emissions ever. After all the hopeful messages in 2020, COVID, everyone stopped flying, etc. We are not only back to the way it used to be, but it's even a bit worse. The consequences, of course, we see that happening everywhere. Until a few months ago, in the Netherlands, we thought it's not our problem, and then we had all the floods in the south of the country. And we see that more and more people are actually realizing that something is happening and that it's not a hoax. And we are, in a sense, heading in the wrong direction. And the third thing, and what's really important to us, is that it was really difficult to make a change. A lot of companies have a budget, they have the intention to do something, but what they don't have is the time and the knowledge. So it's really difficult, for example, to say, we are now a climate positive company. And we started thinking about this and realizing that if we could hand a solution to companies, saying, okay, we make climate change, fighting climate change possible for you, and we are trying to enable every business to combat climate change in an easy and transparent way, whilst focusing on green impact. Now, what does that mean exactly? For example, the easy way means something that we are now actually also doing with you, and I'll explain in a bit, is that we are compensating the carbon footprints of every employee of ViaEurope. That means that we are actually working on a monthly basis together with ViaEurope to say, okay, we are realizing green impact on your behalf. Now it's really transparent. ViaEurope now has a profile, right, Min? It's now public since a few days, and you can see there what your company has done so far. I will explain a bit about the projects that we do, but you've planted trees already, you've protected rainforest, and you're supporting green energy projects as well. And we are really focusing on green impact, because although I do really believe that we're heading in the wrong direction, I don't think that the solution is to be really activist about it and to start screaming that we're all gonna die and chain myself to the Shell headquarters, for example. I think it's good that there are activists, but let's try and see if we can really help out businesses in actually making a change. A bit about Regreener. What do we do and how do we do it? So we built this platform, and on the platform you have a user profile. Like I said, ViaEurope also has its own profile now. But what we also try to focus on is a bit of gamification. Let's try and see if we can get companies to make it a bit of a challenge. Who's the greenest and who's making the most green impact? I think at the moment you're at number 7, so good job there. We're also focusing... Like I said, BJ, we're just getting started, right? You only started in November, so you're doing quite good already. Next to that, we're also focusing a bit on carbon certificates. I don't want to dive too deep into that because it's quite difficult, but I'll explain it a bit because we also did something on the kilometers and the energy usage of the company last year. And we have this impact dashboard, which means that in your profile, you can actually see this paper trail of what happened, how many trees were planted, where are they located, what does that project look like, for example, or if you see the amount of hectares of rainforest that are protected on behalf of ViaEurope, you can really see what that project looks like and what are we doing there. Well, what does that portfolio of climate change fighting solutions then look like? When Bernard and I started this company, we were very enthusiastic and maybe a bit idealistic in a way, and we thought, let's buy a piece of land and plant trees. And it turned out that that was a bit more difficult than expected. But I've been told by a lot of entrepreneurs that that's part of the journey, right? So what we are now doing is that we are actually partnering up with companies that are super focused on, for example, tree planting. There's this major tree planting organizations, for example, Eden Reforestation Projects. We have a partnership with them, and we're doing tree planting projects together with that organization in Kenya and Mozambique. And recently we also partnered with WeForest, another big organization really focusing on tree planting and assisted natural regeneration. But we are not actually the ones planting the trees. No, we partner up with companies that are really specialized in doing that, so that everyone can focus on what they're good at. Same goes for rainforest protection. We do that with the Rainforest Partnership. And then for the green energy projects, we are actually providing our customers with gold standard and VCS certificates. I'll explain that in a bit. So that way we are actually the party that's really heavy on providing information to our users. We think that the transparency is really important. Let us tell you what your company is actually doing, right? Where are the trees located? What kind of tree is it? Why is that important? Who are the people planting it? And what are all the benefits that come from that project? If there's any questions, you can shout them out now, or we have a moment for questions at the end of the presentation. So like I already explained a bit, we're doing tree planting in Kenya and Mozambique, and we recently added Zambia there too. We do rainforest conservation in the Amazon, in Ecuador, which is the western part of the Amazon. It's a project called Women of the Rio Napo, and the Rio Napo is the Napo River. And what we're doing there is that we're not actually just buying land. This is one of the projects that you are supporting actually. We're not just buying land there, but what we really try to do is focus on education. Educating and empowering women in that area who until recently were not working. Yesterday was International Women's Day. It was a very big day for the Rainforest Partnership and therefore also for Regreener, because what we are doing there is actually teaching women in that area how to treat the forest, to make sure that they have revenue and income in a sustainable way, right? So the easiest short-term solution for them would probably be to sell the land to a company that comes there, cuts down all the trees, sells the wood, etc. But then it's gone forever. Now we are educating them, and they are actually providing the land they own to the project. So the land is still owned by the local community. And what we do is tell them how to use the land. So how can we really make sure that there's sustainable income and there's a flow of income coming out of that for the coming, we hope, 1,000 years. The green energy and renewables projects is various. Every month we provide our users with different projects because of the fact that these are certified projects. So you have, for example, Gold Standard and VCS. These are institutes that give out a certificate. Now, how does this work? I'll be short on this because it might be boring to some of you, but it might be good to really understand quickly how that works. For example, you put a windmill in your backyard. That's a change of a situation. In the old situation, your energy came from probably, it was what we call gray energy, right? And now it's green energy. Well, what the certification institutes do is they calculate the difference between the two situations and the carbon emission that was reduced by this action of putting this windmill in your backyard. That's the amount of carbon credits you get. So for example, if you build a windmill, they say, okay, that's 1,000 tons of CO2 that are not reduced anymore each year. So each year you get 1,000 carbon credits. We buy the credits, we retire them so that they cannot be traded anymore, and we provide them to our customers. Why do we do this? It's not really the most green thing out of the three kind of projects that we do, but it's really important for companies, for example, to put in their yearly reports so that they really have the proof of a certified organization that says the carbon was compensated. So we do these three kinds of projects. And when we were looking for projects to partner and organizations to partner up with, we looked for three things. First of all, aimed at reducing CO2, of course, because in a sense, that's the core of our business. But next to that, we are really looking at positive effects on biodiversity. Planting 1 million trees says nothing. If you plant 1 million of the same trees and you put 1 meter in between each and every one of them, that's not regreening the world, right? That's tree planting. So we are really looking into growing forests instead of planting trees. And next to that, we're also really looking to empower local communities, because we see, for example, in the eastern part of Africa, where we do a lot of tree planting, that a lot of the land over there is degraded land. And that's a result of heavy agro activities going on over there. And a lot of that was actually done for example, the European market. And I truly believe, and we as a company truly believe, that it's also our responsibility to fix what we messed up. Now let's quickly dive into our partnership actually. So what does ViaEurope do for you also as employees? ViaEurope now has a climate positive workforce, which means that they realize green impact every month for every employee within the company. This means that on a monthly basis, they are actually compensating your footprint. So we take an average, right? I'm not quite sure where all of you are from, but looking at the fact that the presentation is in English, most of you probably aren't from the Netherlands, or at least some of you aren't. But we were looking at an average footprint for example, Western European citizens. What is your footprint as a citizen? Any ideas? On a yearly basis? 10.5 tons of CO2 each year. Imagine a ton of CO2 being a giant ball a bit higher than this roof. So it's quite a lot, right? Times 10 every year. We took that average, we added 10% so that we know that you're climate positive actually. And what we do is on a monthly basis, we plant trees, we protect rainforests, and we do a little bit of these carbon certificates that I just told you guys about, so that we can make sure that all of you live a climate positive life. So just to be clear, this means that your employer actually is willing to go the extra mile, because they are not just focusing on their own corporate footprint, right? It's not just about the emissions of ViaEurope, which I'll tell you about in a bit, but it's also about your personal lives. I think that's a really cool thing. We discussed with them, and 5 of the people within the company have a big foot, which means that they have 4 times the average carbon footprint that we are compensating for them. And the rest of you all has an average shoe size, as we like to call it. But I think this is a really cool thing, and it really shows that ViaEurope as a company is actually willing to really do something, right? And it's not just taking its responsibility as a company and saying, okay, we have emissions, let's compensate them. No, they also really want to do something to get the employees involved as well. Your impact so far, as you can see, you'd only started since November. 2,520 trees planted so far. More than 1,000 trees in Mozambique, 970 trees in Kenya, and 420 in Zambia. I think it's a lot. If you try to imagine what 2,520 trees look like, it's quite hard to do, right? Next to that, you did already 68.20 hectares in the Women of the Rio Napo project, which also is more than you can possibly imagine at this moment. Which is really cool, because that means that also as a company you are really investing in a way in the future of the local communities there. And we did 252 tons of CO2 that were compensated. Part of that came through the tree planting project, but also part of that came from the carbon certificates that I just explained. We did that through green energy in Uganda and biomass in Chile. But next to that, ViaEurope is also looking into its corporate footprint, right? So what are you emitting as a company? Sorry to say, but you're probably not the greenest company out there, right? And I think most of you are aware of that. But I think taking your responsibility and on one hand look at what you're doing and how you could optimize the process and really make sure that you reduce your carbon footprint, and on the other hand compensating it through the best projects out there, is a really good thing to do actually. So these were the numbers for 2021. For the kilometers and the energy use, we did the calculations. Actually, my co-founder did it, but he's skiing at the moment, so that's why I'm here. And it's really a good thing to see, I think, that you now have insight as a company in what are we doing, right? This is your point zero, this is your starting point. And from now on, you can also see what happens if you change your processes, for example. So in total for 2021, and I'll say it once again, this is just the beginning, and also just discussed with BJ that this is just the beginning, but 702 tons of CO2 were compensated. And together we started looking for the right carbon credits to buy to compensate this amount of CO2. And what we did was we looked for VCS and gold standard certificates, and we looked for projects in the Netherlands and in China. I think it's because most of the products come from China, right? And most of the emissions are actually happening in the Netherlands. So the project we did in the Netherlands is actually a really special one. What it says there and what it actually means is capturing pig farts. That's really what it is, and I can't make it any better than that. But what they do is they capture pig farts, really, and they generate power, which I think is a really cool thing to do. And it's also a good story for all of you guys, right? My employer generates power through pig farts.
But that's my employer, that's like just me.
You're doing a good job. And the other project was located in China, and it was a renewable fuel project, which means that they use fuel coming from organic matter to also generate power. And together they did 562 tons of CO2 that were compensated in the Netherlands through the pig fart project, and 140 tons of CO2 in China via the gold standard project. Meaning that actually for 2021 the kilometers and the energy use was fully compensated. And like we just discussed when the previous presentation was going on, there might even be some more action this year. What I wanted to show you, as this is the end of my presentation, and we'll get to the questions after that, is that as per this week, your profile as a company is actually public, meaning that on the Regreener website there's now this ViaEurope project page where you can see that it's your company that's doing this, and you can also see the amount of trees that were planted and also where the trees are located. Now by clicking here you also get forwarded to the project page, giving you way more information about the kind of trees that are planted, the people that are actually planting it, etc. Same goes for the other categories. And one side note on this is that the 702 tons of CO2 were not yet added there too, but we're working on that at the moment. But what I think is really cool is that it really shows that also you as employees can now see what happens, right? So on a monthly basis, you can see the numbers going up and really see, okay, we are still doing this, and you might even be doing more in the future. And I think by showing that you are a part of the Regreener community, you can also empower other companies to start doing the same, which I think is really cool in a sense. So to the management team and the rest of you present here today, thank you very much for supporting Regreener, and let's regreen the world together.